Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Hey, in my series Freemasonry and Satanism. All started years ago when I wanted to find out what the heck is going on in the world. Why were people losing their homes? Why were people suffering in Argentina, California, Germany, Canada? Why was the economic collapse everywhere? It didn't make sense to me. Then, of course, we all know about 9/11. And what do most of us know about World War I, World War II? The things going on behind the scenes to create the state of Israel. What was the drama behind that? What was the purpose? I guess the big question is, what's going to be the final result? And I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday. We were driving down the highway from a business meeting. And he was Jewish. And like many people who are Jewish, you can't even talk about Jewish people, if you're not Jewish, without the words, "You're not anti-Semite, are you?" coming out. When I started my investigation, I had no idea what the answer was to my question, what the heck is going on in the world? And we all are aware of the recent election. This is January 2017, between Hillary and Donald, now President Donald Trump. And just the bizarreness of the whole thing, and of course the coming out of apparently the pedophilia and other bizarre, satanic, if you will, Pizzagate and other activities, which seems to be unfolding every day. More evidence. And of course, when I was shopping this Christmas season a month ago, one of the largest retailers for electronics, there was a big menorah on the door, 7 candlestick thing, and I thought about this. I said, where's Merry Christmas? Where's a cross? Where's any of this? And it's not there because apparently it's offensive. But the menorah, the 7 candlestick thing, apparently because nobody, generally speaking, non-Jewish people, have no idea what it is, what is going on, what the new age is, the new world order. Satanism, Antichrist, the destruction of Christianity, just all kinds of crazy things. And this is series number 108, Freemasonry and Satanism, and the topic will be Zionism, the Zionist history of the Jewish people, the people who were for it, who were Jewish, the people who were against it, who were Jewish, and of course the masses of the rest of us who really don't understand the implications or what it is. And the deals made behind the backs of the citizens of countries. Even the people in Palestine never had a say-so in their own country, which is all but being annexed by the state of Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu seems to be the man who will see the last Palestinian on that territory and take the last piece of land. Look up what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in Fink's Bar. I don't want to tell you because it's just too bizarre. And then, of course, Prime Minister Sharon of Israel, in a heated argument in his Congress in Israel, when they said, we can't keep taking the Palestinians' lands, or something to that effect. The United States will intervene, and Prime Minister Sharon screamed out, don't worry about the United States, we control the United States. So I believe there's something larger going on worldwide that we all need to be aware of. So with that said, I was looking at my Encyclopaedia Judaica, first published in 19 1971. And I'm convinced that the information here is slanted, tainted with untruths and propaganda. And it is their encyclopedia, so they would publish it so that it puts them in a good light and everybody else in a bad light. And I think in series 106 on the USA anti-Semitism, we're here in the United States, General Ulysses Grant, a general in the United States, exiled all of the Jewish people from the Tennessee territories, which included Kentucky, Mississippi, etc. Why? Henry Ford bought the Dearborn Independent to tell the stories about the horrific goings-on in New York City and a lot of other places in the United States, Chicago, with all these Yiddish Jews coming to the United States. An intentional migration and immigration organized by higher-ups for whatever purposes. I think probably for power and money. Political deals, again, made behind the people's backs. So with that said, I came across this word as I've been perusing these Encyclopaedia Judaicas. And there's this, I came across this word, Kishinev, the capital of Moldavine, formerly of Basharriba. Okay, so I want to show it to you because I'm not saying it right, I'm sure. So I started reading it and I said, oh my, I need to share this. So apparently, listen to the dates here and the goings on. And remember the 106 Freemasonry and Satanism Encyclopaedia Judaica, USA-Anti-Semitism. Go back and watch that if you haven't. And then listen to what happened here, halfway around the world. And let's see what we think. In 1774, a Harva Kadisha was founded, I think it's some kind of school, in the town with a membership of 144. When Kishinev became the capital of Basarriba under Russian rule in 1818, remember the dates, so 1818, then 1918, and 2018, so a couple hundred years ago, easy, when came under Russian rule in 1818, it developed rapidly, becoming a commercial and industrial center, and many Jews moved there from around other places in Russia. So Russia annexed some land off its eastern border. I went and got a map so I could understand this stuff. But anyways, I drew a line where the Russian border is here. And then over here you have these Eastern European areas, the Black Sea. So all of Russia would be over here and extending here. And you can see where it says the Ukraine and Serbia, Bosnia, all the places above the Black Sea, above the Mediterranean. And I did pay attention here and I zoomed in on this map. And apparently the Black Sea does have a canal, like the Panama Canal, that goes out to this other Marmaid, another small sea, and that goes out to the Mediterranean. So obviously an important seaport area right in the middle of this map. So that's where it is. So what's going on there today, before I read about the history? A Jewish community, Chabad, Lubavitch, Kishinev, and Moldova. So apparently, welcome to the Chabad of Kishinev and Moldova. We are here to serve the community in Kishinev, I'm saying it wrong, and nearby cities since the 1990 fall of communism. We gladly assist you with kosher food and prayer services or any other needs of yours. So right now, apparently, it says here, after decades of war and destruction and oppression, the Jewish community of Kishinev is experiencing a renaissance. So I went and looked up renaissance, and it's like a resurgence or rebirth. Unprecedented in modern times. Jewish life in Kishinev and its neighboring towns is experiencing a renaissance, and its neighboring towns is once again alive and well. The catalyst and guiding spirit of the Jewish community of Kishinev is Rabbi Zalman Albisky, who, together with his wife of 50 years, has come to Kishinev from his home in Israel to rebuild Jewish life, which languished a victim of the Holocaust of World War II and the destruction wreaked by the atheistic communist regime. So I'm a bit perplexed here. Who created the communists? And were the communists really atheist? I think that the people who invaded Russia, the Bolshevik Jewish people, who proceeded, according to what I have studied and researched, and admitted in the Israeli newspaper, 25 million non-Jewish people in Russia, off on that map I just showed you. But were the Bolsheviks, the Jewish people, who went in there and abducted the Tsar, assassinated his family, and took over the country, and according to documentation, killed 25 million Jews. Some documentation says up to 100 million, but apparently they created communism, and that spread to China with Mao, who killed untold millions. And apparently in the 1920s in the United States, they had communist congressional hearings, and the communists, according to my research, admitted they were infiltrating the churches, the medical thing, the educational system, politics, and a plan to take over. And we went over some of that in my previous Encyclopaedia Judaica series. And I think it was 106. And 105 was on the Kabbalah series. And I'm going to continue more on that. I'm going to continue to investigate and dig until I can ferment a firm idea in my mind what's going on with this new age and new world order and what I call the grand deception of the world. So here over in this area, I'll read another paragraph, north of the Black Sea, near Bosnia, near all those places in the news, even during Bill Clinton's presidency, they attacked Bosnia. So all those communities along the top of the Mediterranean, coming from Italy and France and Germany and Britain and Italy and Austria, the path where they had the 8 crusades, plus or minus, from the kings and queens of Europe and the Vatican over towards the top of the Mediterranean, down into Israel along the coastline, and killing everybody and seizing all the goods and gold and palaces and castles, and 8 times in 300 years, from 1000 to 13. So a lot going on in this area. A lot of people pushed out, and a lot of people pushed back, and a lot of people pushed up, and other people from other tribes pushed down. So this might behoove us, and again, when I get back to the encyclopedia here in a minute, all this pre-conversation will make a little sense. But here it says, most of us draw a blank about Kishinev and Moldova. Apparently it's a country. The name is not connected to any image that comes readily to mind. It's just another geographical spot in that conglomerate of vague old nations, old new nations, awkwardly tagged. The former Soviet Union. For others, the name Kishinev a sinister connotation, recalling grim photos of piles of bodies. Jewish victims of the terrible pogroms, Pogroms, which I have determined means that certain laws were established to control the Jewish people, limiting their activities, etc., which were perpetrated there at the turn of the century. So apparently, right now, in this place north of the Black Sea, in this Moldova country, Kishinev, this city, is doing really great. I looked at some pictures. They got beautiful skyscrapers. You can go look up this stuff and check on the website here on the bottom. So apparently right now it's thriving, a thriving, well-populated Jewish community in this area. Many hundreds of Jews took part in Hanukkah events across Moldova. Large menorahs were lit by Chief Rabbi Albensky, lighting candles every night of the thing. So again, I need to continue to find out why on one of the largest retail electronics stores I went shopping at this Christmas had a big 7-candlestick menorah on the door. And as I was at this same store the other day with a friend of mine buying a washing machine and a dryer, I was just meandering around an aisle away looking at all those games for children and videos. And if one were to look at that for a minute and just ponder it, the evil-looking monster characters killing and fighting, and a really beautiful woman with swords and all kind of satanic battlefield-like action going on. Stuff that I guess people buy for their kids these days. And I'm a little bit aware of psychology, the thing that goes in the brain. And I remember 20 years ago when I had 2 boys I was raising, and they got Pokemon was popular, those little round things. And I said to myself, in the future, kids are going to look like those Pokemon chips. And I believe it was intentional. And today, I discussed this with my friend I was driving in my truck with yesterday. And I mentioned that as a kind of a funny thing. And he said, you know, we go downtown, because I go out where we have music and live bands and a couple breweries in my town, and a lot of the people look like those Pokemon chips. And on the sides of the buildings, the people who do graffiti and building wall murals, it's all gigantic skulls and demonic-looking pictures. Very weird. So with that said, with this new age and this new world order and those games, those electronic games and the movies and the cartoons for children, also look monstrous, demonic, satanic, something just not nice, nothing like you would really want your child to be playing with. It's like the Pokemon thing 20 years ago, and everybody's into that. So there seems to be this divide in the world, and I think most people will agree. And apparently it's the progressive or the liberals against the conservatives, and this media, this propaganda behind the scenes is controlling this divide. The Hegelian dialectic. And the people who are controlling it are not on the left or the progressive, or not on the conservative and the Christian. It's some puppet masters from above. So let me read some more from this book and see if we can understand what part Zionism plays in this whole thing. Alright, back to this Encyclopaedia Judaica. And going back to where I was reading, it's a heavy book, so bear with me looking down so much. So Russia took it over in 1818, a couple hundred years ago. And it developed rapidly, and I don't see why not. It was the Black Sea does have a canal that goes out to the Merman, whatever, small sea, and that has a waterway, a channel that goes out to the Mediterranean, which of course goes out to the Atlantic Ocean. So obviously this city, Kishinev, is near the ocean, near the sea, Black Sea. So it would be a prosperous port city to do business and travel. So in 1818, when Russia took it, I could see why Russia would want it, to have the access to the Black Sea. A lot of commerce there. So the powers that be fought for these properties along the northern Mediterranean shore for 1,000 years. It's been a lot of goings on. And I do have another video series, will be on the Khazarians. I've been studying the 13th tribe, and that should be more enlightening to the activities and the people and the cultures of this area. So let me go on. Alright, and many Jews moved there from other places in Russia. So Russia was having trouble, I guess, dealing with these people who were into the Jewish religion. And they were coming down hard on these people, and many of them wanted to migrate away from the czarist, that's what they called their leader, a czar, not a king or a president or a prime minister. It was the czar. And I know a lot of people know that, but maybe everybody doesn't, so I explain. So 1818. So back in 1816, they laid the first foundation stone for the Great Synagogue. And in 1838, in the wake of the authorities' efforts to hasten. So now we're talking 20 years later, the authorities of the area, the government, wanted to hasten the efforts of the assimilation of the Jews. So for the last couple thousand years, I can accurately say that whatever country, Spain, Britain, all over the world, it's common knowledge, you go watch videos, 92 different countries over the last 2,000 years have come down hard on the Jews, and even in many countries exiling them, demanding that they all leave. After they welcomed them, and when they did get there, the Jewish people, generally speaking, wanted to remain separate with their own communities, their own churches, and their own activities. And the authorities wanted them to assimilate. And the first Jewish secular school was opened. So a lot of the Jewish cultures, wherever they went, all over the world, tried to resist assimilating into these cultures. Why is that? Jews, so we move forward here to 1847 and 1867, 1897. So at the close of the 19th century, so the late 1800s, many of the Jews were engaged in commerce, handicrafts, and industry. About 20,000 Jews were in miscellaneous occupations. And this is way back then, so that's a huge population when you consider the population of the world today. And in particular in the garment and timber industries, and in the manufacture and trade of agriculture products, for which the region was noted. So it would be a region that would be noted for trees and agriculture. Jews, here's the important thing here, Jews owned many flour mills, plants for curing tobacco, and drying fruit and wine cellars. In 1898, almost 1900, 29 of the 38 factories of all kinds in Kishinev were owned by Jews. So 100 years or less they were coming to this area, and now they they own 29 of the 38 factories, and apparently, according to my understanding and knowledge, they would have been a small percentage of the general population. Large commercial houses and printing presses were also owned by Jews and employed thousands of Jewish workers. And also remember, this is the Encyclopaedia Judaica, and I believe they are writing this stuff in this book, painting the Jewish people at that time in a more positive light. I guess that would go without saying. They wouldn't make an encyclopedia and say that paint themselves in a bad light. So you have to be discerning when you read stuff. Because of the policy of Russian authorities, who deliberately fostered anti-Semitism. So in this book, and these people own 29 of the 38 factories. They didn't want to assimilate with the other people. But apparently the Russian authorities, who deliberately fostered anti-Semitism. So the government that put them there, tried to have them assimilate, now is deliberately fostering anti-Semitism. And I have to wonder why. And passed legislation restricting the sources of livelihood open to Jews. So there had to be some people complaining, and there had to be some problem. Because as I said before, you don't usually call the pest control company up to come spray your house for ants unless you have ants. And usually the police don't get in an uproar like in communities with gangs and shootings unless there are gangs and shootings. So there has to be a cause and effect is what I'm saying. So this says in this book that the Russian authorities back then deliberately fostered anti-Semitism. And I would just wonder why they would focus on all that. I'm sure they have other more important things to do, like running a whole country or countries back then. Who deliberately fostered anti-Semitism, passed legislation restricting the sources of livelihood open to Jews. Kishinev had a particular large number of poor and destitute who were supported by the various charitable institutions. In 1898, almost 1900, a separate welfare organization amalgamated to form the Society in Aid of the Poor in Kishinev. Until World War I, the framework of the Jewish life remained unchanged. Kishinev was the seat of the Bessarabian headquarters of several Jewish institutions. So they were forming these Jewish institutions. They owned lots of factories. They were gaining a lot of power. Maybe that irritated a lot of people. It wouldn't surprise me. Which included the Jewish Colonization Association, the ICA. The Jewish Colonization Association sounds like some really powerful political organizations and activities taking place. That would cause people to take notice, including the Russian government. And the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee after World War I. The American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee after World War I. And the American Joint Reconstruction Foundation. Judah Lib Zerelson, the chief rabbi of Kishinev, and Bessarabian Jewry from 1909, founded a yeshiva there. That's a Jewish school. There were also Jewish schools with instructions in Yiddish. Remember, those are during this period, 1920s, 1915s, 1910s, 1928, were, as we all know, that I went over in previous videos, and I'll go over some more. In Henry Ford's books that I have, volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, the Dearborn Independent, which were a collection of articles in his Dearborn Independent magazine, a newspaper he bought. And because he wanted to publish the goings-on and activities of the Yiddish Jews and other people immigrating into the United States and also taking over businesses, companies, industries in a very aggressive fashion, and apparently, obviously, with superior money and intellect, premeditated planning going on in the background. And Henry Ford, as an automaker in a powerful position that he was, saw these things, bought a newspaper, published it, and of course because he reported on these goings-on in New York and the rest of America, where it was that they were predominantly immigrating these Yiddish Jewish folks from Eastern Europe, this area, as it says here, to New York and other major cities across America, and the problems they were causing, which, as we went over in my series number 106, Anti-Semitism in the United States, where General Ulysses Grant exiled all the Jews from the Tennessee Territory. So anybody, Ulysses Grant, Henry Ford, the automaker, these people, the Russian government, if you do anything to curtail the aggressive tendencies of these people migrating into your area, and you report on that, you would be considered anti-Semite, which I don't even think they're Semitic people. It seems like they're Eastern European Khazarians, and so that word really wouldn't apply. And I think politically speaking, like Cuba or Mexico or China or Russia, any country or people that get in the news that are doing things affecting the livelihood of everybody else usually gets reported on. We don't call those people anti-Mexicans and anti-Cubans and anti-Chinese and anti-Russians. So it just noticed to me that in this particular case, it seems to be one group of people that nobody can talk about in the world. And ironically, a lot of what I learned was from famous Jewish authors who wrote books trying to warn us about certain Zionist Illuminati types like Henry Mackay, PhD author in Canada, Jewish author, wrote the book The Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World. So there's a Jewish author. Go look up Henry Mackay, M-A-K-O-W, and you can see a lot of his essays online. He has a website and a lot of videos. And he's a Jewish man saying the things that I'm saying, that apparently there is this dark force of people who will ruthlessly come into an area and try to own and control everything, which would obviously disturb a lot of the normal culture and livelihood of people there. And apparently it's just not a very friendly thing, like when I went into that major electronics store and they have all those horrific demonic type games and videos and cartoons for our kids and for adults, all those movies. I went down several aisles and it was all predominantly just very viciousness, murder and mayhem, entertainment and stuff. It's too much. Somebody's doing this intentionally. Like with Pizzagate, pedophilia, the Bohemian Grove in California, where Alex Jones snuck in there and videotaped the Bohemian Grove satanic ritual under a gigantic owl, where they threw a baby in the fire, cremation of care. So there just seems to be a satanic cult kind of controlling our world right now, and planning to control the whole world with the New Age and the New World Order. And I've made many videos to back up what I'm saying, as if you've been watching my videos, you know that. So let me read more about this history and see how it fits into this picture like a glove. And this glove does fit, not like the O.J. Simpson cliche, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Well, what I'm reading here does fit with what has been happening. That's one of the key things, like the Protocols of Zion. A lot of people of the Jewish organizations have discredited them and said that they're forgeries, but the fact of the matter is, what they say they were doing, what they were going to do, and what the outcome would be, is exactly what they have done, what they are doing, and looks like what the way the world is going to be. They were telling us, like with the Hunger Games movie. Read the Protocols of Zion. They're free online. But let me read more about these people in this particular area, just west of Russia and north of the Mediterranean and Black Sea, in a very strategic area, I might point out, between trade, between continents and all that. Lots of resources here. Okay. I was reading on that there was headquarters to the Jewish Colonization Association and the American Joint Reconstruction Foundation. American Joint Reconstruction. I like these names. And they have these Yiddish and Hebrew schools. So I talked about all the Yiddish people moving to New York and Henry Ford writing about them in 1910, 15, 20, 25. They were setting up complexes all over Eastern Europe, camps, to train these Yiddish people in teaching and proper behavior and shipping them over by the boatload into New York City. And they were causing a lot of problems, and they did acquire a lot of businesses and properties, and did cause upheaval in the American social climate and economic climate. Apparently, according to Henry Ford, they would sit in the theaters and sing these songs in Yiddish, and if you understood what they were saying, they were insulting everybody in the theater and laughing about it. But don't believe me, go get Henry Ford's books, volume 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the Dearborn Independent. You can look it up at used book sites if you can't find it at a new bookstore. So at this time in 1898, there were 16 Jewish schools in Kishinev with 2,100 pupils. 700 Jewish pupils attended general schools. So up here to 1909, from when they started over there in 1774, obviously this was a good place for them to grow and get a lot of businesses and get a lot of power in the communities. So the next paragraph highlights, says, persecution and pogroms. So it gave us an introduction, and now it takes us into persecution. Right there in the center of this screen. So, like I said before, it didn't take long in the last 1,000 or 2,000 years for a lot of Jewish people to wear out their welcome. And of course, that doesn't mean all Jewish people. And a lot of people here in the United States who are Jewish, in my opinion, don't have any idea of this stuff. And a lot of people that are Jewish, who are seriously knowledgeable, who are Orthodox, believe in God, the Ten Commandments, you can go on Yahoo image sites and see them with posters and protesting, and click the link to those websites, and those Jewish rabbis and seriously religious people will tell you that they think that Judaism is not Zionism. And they're opposed to annexing and all the Palestinians' lands, and they are fighting and protesting the murder of many of the Palestinian people. And if you go look up Greater Israel, you will find that they have plans for an area encompassing a large part of Syria, Iraq, and current Israel, and other lands, parts of Egypt, creating something called Greater Israel. This is all planned, and I think by the time I finish reading this stuff, you'll probably see it too. So here we go. Persecutions and pogroms. The name of Kishinev became known to the world at large as a result of two pogroms, not programs, pogroms, P-O-G-R-Ms. These are laws initiated by the government to curtail, restrict certain activities of certain people. The first initiated and organized by the local and central authorities. So the local and central authorities initiated some pogroms that took place during Easter on April 6 to 7 in 1903. I'm skipping some stuff here. I'm not reading everything. The pogrom was preceded by a poisonous anti-Jewish campaign led by P. Krishaven, director of the Bessarabian newspaper. So the local newspaper editor was creating a campaign anti-Jewish. I hate to say this again, but why, unless there was something going on that was offending a lot of people, causing disharmony? Remember, this is the Jewish Encyclopedia, and they're not going to see anything anywhere in the world, including General Ulysses Grant exiling the Jews from the Tennessee territories. It's always going to be somebody else's fault, and a lot of Jewish people have been trying to tell us about aggressive Jewish people who apparently are not religious into the Bible and the Ten Commandments and God, but feel that If they can get it and take it by whatever means, that's what they're going to do. And that's not me saying this. I'm going to read this in the Encyclopaedia Judaica. And as I've already shown you here, they went into a community and they wound up owning 29 of 38 factories. And now they got the government issuing programs. So this is the leader of the newspaper who incited the population through a constant stream of vicious articles. So this newspaper guy started writing vicious articles. It gets a little bit more stranger. One of the authors of the most virulent articles was the local police chief. So as we already know, when police chiefs have certain problems in certain areas, gun shootings, drugs, they get the war on drugs. That's what police authorities and newspapers do. So now they're demonizing the local police chief, and they're calling his actions the most virulent articles was by the local police chief, a guy named Leventhal. In such a heated atmosphere, any incident could have dire consequences. So there was a heated atmosphere at this time. And when the body of a Christian child was found in the Jewish hospital, when the body of a Christian child was found, a young Christian woman patient committed suicide in a Jewish hospital, the mob became violent. So a young Christian woman was in a Jewish hospital and she committed suicide, and her baby was found dead. Apparently there was an accusation, and the authorities back then, and this is not the first time this accusation has taken place, and I'm going to have to look into this as much as I don't want to, but they said the child was a result of a blood libel circulated by the Basser rabbits, spread like wildfire. So they found a dead child, and it was later proved, this is the Encyclopaedia Judaica, that the child was murdered by his relatives, and that the suicide young woman was in no way connected to the Jewish people. According to the official statistics, 49 Jews lost their lives and more than 500 were injured, some of them seriously. 700 houses were looted and destroyed, and 600 businesses and shops were looted. The material loss amounted to 2,500,000 gold rubles, and about 2,000 families were left homeless. So there was quite an attack onto this apparently prosperous Jewish community. But what is a blood libel, and why is it in my research it appears to be popping up quite regularly? So why don't I take just a peek at that, and what is it, and see if I can show it in this video. I'm not going to get into this in this video. If you really want to look it up, go ahead, but I did look in the Encyclopaedia Judaica, and the word blood libel, apparently it's a satanic ritual or a cabalistic ritual, and I intend to make some more videos on the Kabbalah, which apparently, according to the Judaical Encyclopedia, is the cultural history or activities of the Jewish people. And of course, we have to be reminded, not all Jewish people. I mean, there's even people who were raised in Christian families who these days join the Freemasons and politics and rise up to high places to do evil things to society and become witches and all this other stuff, and bank robbers and murderers and pedophilias. So they can come from any culture. But apparently many times throughout history, and it says that here, they have this ritual where they take a little boy. I know you don't want to see this. So when you find the body, there would be no doubt about what happened. I'm not going to look it up, but they were, it says right here, we are said to be the most criminal of men on the score of our sacramental baby killing and baby eating that goes with it. So I hate to do it, but maybe one day I'll get the courage up to read all about the blood libel and make a video on it. But apparently what they do is they hold the child up, as you saw in the picture, and they poke holes in the child, and they have little goblets or pails, and they collect the raining out or the falling out of the blood, and they put pincers all over the child to cause and inflict more pain. They don't want the child to die quickly. And apparently that releases some kind of hormone into the blood. Then they drink that blood, and it's supposed to put them in some kind of have some kind of drug effect on them, and they can go into a trance and maybe leave their bodies or see this other world or whatever, like the shamans do. When I made those videos on Carlos Castienda, A Separate Reality, you can go see, just type that in on Freemasonry and Satanism and you'll find my video. 2 videos, I think. And they would take peyote or certain mushrooms and go into a trance and see this other reality. Apparently, some kind of satanic ritual, when you put the holes all over the child and put pincers and keep him alive and hold him up as long as he'll stay alive and let the blood rain out and drink it, it's some kind of drug and some kind of satanic ritual. So when you find the body, it would be pretty obvious because it would have all the holes punctured all over it. And many times around Europe, if you look this up, they would find in these communities where the Jewish people would be nearby in a community, they would find these young children. I guess some people accuse them of abducting little Christian boys, and probably others. It's just a bizarre conversation, but you've seen it in the book, and you're seeing it what they're accusing the police or whoever in the mob were accusing them one in this Kishinev city in Moldova, in just west of Russia. So one has to wonder repeatedly why these people, like we read in the previous videos, where the Jewish people were exiled from Spain and exiled from Britain, England, and some of that was in my Encyclopaedia Judaica Kabbalah videos, 7 of those I made so far. So this stuff keeps coming up. So is it everybody else in the world at fault? And these people are just being subjected to unwarranted persecution. And of course, it's not all Jews. And that's the horrible thing, because a lot of Jews know it's what the real story is. And I wish more Jewish people would come forward, and then I wouldn't have to investigate this stuff and make videos and report. So I'm back to the topic of Kishinev. I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Kishinev. And we see now that after they had enjoyed serious growth in this community, now there's persecutions and programs coming around, and accusations of blood libels where the child is murdered in some kind of satanic ritual. But in the Judaical Encyclopedia, they're saying they're not at fault. And of course, what else would they say in their encyclopedia? And a lot of Jewish people, like Rabbi Marvin Antelman, in Volume 1, Volume 2, To Eliminate the Opaque, has told the story about a lot of this. Professor Higgins in the Jewish Utopia. And all those other videos I made back then from 66 to 71 series. 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71. And you're probably curious why I remember those numbers. Well, 66 is an ominous number, 666. So that's when I started that subject. And 72 is the 72 names of God. So that's when I started doing the articles or the videos on books I read in the Bible. So I know which were the parameters. So 66 to 71 were books: Bloody Zion, An American Jew Moves to Israel, Jack Bernstein, Who Tells All. And so I've read, now where this video here is 108, and I've got about 400 hours of videos on YouTube, and I've read a couple hundred books. I have a library of 500 or 600. Thousands of videos, hundreds of magazines, tens of thousands of press releases. And I spent the last 12 years paying attention to the media, newspapers, anything else, TV programming and all that, and really listening, watching all these videos and reading all these books, trying to figure out one thing: what the heck is going on? Who is the culprit here? And my friend yesterday, a Jewish guy, he said he goes, "Rick, do you really think it's a battle between good and evil?" And I said, absolutely. It's not a Jewish thing per se, as many Jewish people are regular people. They're not involved in this. A lot of Jewish people are atheists. But a small proportion are very aggressive and into this Zionism, cabalistic, Illuminati, high-level Freemasonry, this grab for power and power over people, and sexual perversions, and some kind of maybe mental disease of wanting to torture people and kill people. How else can you explain it? Look at the murder and mayhem that's been going on in the Middle East since 9/11. Look at 9/11. That was an inside job. Go read the books on it. I made videos on it. So who are these people trying to bring about chaos and anarchy to the world? That George Bush Sr. said, out of chaos and anarchy will come the New World Order. Kissinger, the Pope, everybody, Obama, they're all calling for a New World Order. They're all part of these secret societies. All right. So I told you about the people getting killed after that blood libel of the child. 2,000 families were left homeless. Both Russians and Romanians joined in the riots. So both Russians and Romanians joined in the riots. Russians were sent in from other towns, so the government was sending in more troops. And the students of the theological seminaries and the secondary schools and colleges played a leading role. So everybody was involved in getting angry about this. So do you think everybody else was all wrong and this community was unfairly treated? And if that was the case, would that also be the case for the hundreds, if not thousands, of other situations like this that I've gone over in previous videos, where they even had court trials? So apparently, even according to Henry Ford and a couple of these authors of books, whenever you try to take a Jewish person accused of somebody into the court system, you go up a huge wall of power and resistance. Just what I've learned by reading. The truth is the truth. It is what it is. And if anybody wants to be honest, they'll admit that's the way it is. A garrison of 5,000 soldiers stationed in the city, which could easily have been held back the mob, but took no action. So the 5,000 soldiers let the mob go in there and destroy the Jewish businesses and communities. Not that I'm saying it's right, but I'm saying, if in this case here, if I was to make a judgment, I would say we don't really know what the situation was. We weren't there. But, being honest, when I read about it again and again and again and again and again, Henry Ford's books, Bloody Zion, and all these people, Rabbi Marvin Antleman, rabbis, Nestor Webster. Go watch my videos. There's too many to count right now in my head. I start to come up with a solution here. that these Jewish people really can't get along with anybody anywhere. And guess what? It's going to say that here in the next chapter or two. Decisions were made. And the decision was, according to Theodore Herschel, his final solution was, there is no way that we can integrate the Jewish people with everybody else. They cannot be assimilated. So therefore, we have to create a homeland, according to Theodore Herschel, in his book on Israel, which we will be going over in this series on Zionism. So that's their conclusion. The rest of the world, countries all over the world, even in Argentina, United States, Britain, Spain, Germany, and many, many, many more, welcomed these people. But eventually that turned around. So what did these people do? And why in some countries and many places were they charged with sacrificing a child, blood libel? What's that have to do with their religion? By the way, what religion do they have? And is their religion the Kabbalah? Is it the occult? Are they into sorcery? And of course, not all Jews. Alright, public outcry throughout the world was aroused by the incident. Protest meetings were organized in London, Paris, and New York. A letter of protest written in the United States was handed over to President Theodore Roosevelt to be delivered to the Tsar of Russia, who refused to accept the letter. Under the pressure of the public opinion, some of the perpetrators of the pogroms were brought to justice, but they were awarded very lenient sentences. On October 19th through the 20th of 1905, riots broke out once more. They began as a protest demonstrated by the patriots against the Tsar's declaration of August 19th, 1905, and deteriorated into an attack on the Jewish quarter in which 19 Jews were killed, 56 were injured, and houses and shops were looted and destroyed. Remember, I'm reading from the Encyclopaedia Judaica. Damages amounting to 300,000 rubles. On this occasion, some of the Jewish youth organized itself into a self-defense unit. The two pogroms had a profound effect on the Jews of Kishinev. Between 1902 and 1905, their numbers dropped from around 60,000 to 243. Many immigrating to the United States and the Americas, while many more left after the second attack. The economic development of the town was brought to a standstill. So these people were causing all these problems in this area. At least everything from the newspaper to the police chief to the Russian government and everybody were coming down on them. And many of them were immigrating to the United States around that time. And Henry Ford Sr. saw that, as well as many others, and started writing about it in his Dearborn Independent newspaper that he purchased. And Henry Ford Sr. suffered a lot because of that. And they tried to boycott his cars, his manufacturing business. So then trouble was breaking out in the United States by these very same people. So it must be people everywhere else, must be bad people, who just won't allow these people to do whatever they were doing. And it says here in 1898, they owned 29 of the 38 factories, and they were not the majority of the people. Like in the United States, they're only a small percentage, a couple percent, but they occupy 90-something% of advisors and other high-position jobs within the government and huge corporations and everything. Just a little concerning. Makes one wonder. What are we all dealing with? 1914 to 1939. During World War I, when Russian units retreated from the Romanian front in 1917 to 1918, they looted Jewish houses on their homeward journey. So now they're saying their own government was looting all their houses on the way out of the country. When the Romanian army entered the town soon afterwards, it proved no less savage in its treatment of the Jews. Romanian rule, which lasted for 22 years, 1918 to 1940, made no improvement in the condition of the Jews, who were still harassed by official and unofficial anti-Semitism. So again, they keep using this anti-Semitism, and I really don't think any of these people were actually DNA Semites. However, their numbers increased through the arrival of waves of refugees from the pogroms in the Ukraine during the Russian Civil War. As in the past, the local agitators were led by students, especially from the theological seminaries and the Faculty of Agriculture. The local press was once more in the fore in propagating anti-Semitism, and most prominent were the official organ. Now, I can't help but think this. I am aware what was happening in 1918 and 1940, and I do know that there was huge efforts to encourage, if not force, the Jews all over the world to immigrate to Israel. And from my research, they did create internal strife, making it difficult for the Jewish people so that they would move back to Israel. Israel needed the immigration. Israel needed the population. And apparently, as we all know here in America, it's the same Illuminati elite types, Zionist, Masonic, or whatever, who owned the newspapers, who were propagating the promoting the New Age and New World Order and the divide and conquer tactics, the teabaggers and all these other groups, the Women's March on Washington, which was all organized, and many others. People find that hard to believe, but if you go online, you can find these websites and sign up on the Women's March. I've shown it in my last video. You can find out where the buses are. The people in the different colored shirts will direct you where they want you to go. So in the media, it appears like it's a protest and an organized event spontaneously has risen up amongst the people, which it could be anything further from the truth. It's the Democratic organizations controlling their people, and the Republican organizations controlling their people, and the puppet masters on the top are who? The Zionists? The New World Order, New Age people? The people who planned and brought about World War I, planned and brought about World War II, planned and brought about 9/11, and so much more. The Hegelian dialectic. I'm just reading some facts here in the Judaica Encyclopedia about stuff that did happen, and then people from there can make up their own mind. Is this just a one-time thing, or does it happen a lot? And from the videos I made so far, full 100 hours of videos, and I'm up to series number 108 right here, a person doing some research should be able to decide that it seems like all this stuff is planned. A friend of mine said, and she's looked at my material and the books, she said, "Rick, what you found out, to me, is a huge nightmare. It was all planned." She called it a nightmare. I mean, even for me to keep reading these books and finding out more evidence, it is a nightmare. The National Defender, published from 1921, which declared from the start its aim of fighting against the Jew boys, that's what they called them, the speculators, they called them, the parasites, they called them, and the corrupt. So that's in the Encyclopaedia Judaica. So the National Defender wanted to fight against these people. There was also in the anti-Semitic periodical, when the authorities deprived many of the Jews of the Kishinev and the Bassa Arabian in general of their citizenship. So they were deprived of their citizenship in 1924. They lost the very means of livelihood. Hardly a year went by without demonstrations, riots, looting, and threats against the Jews. So when we get into Theodore Herschel, when I read about that, you'll also find out at this particular time, they were having a hard time gathering and uniting all the Jewish people to cooperate and form the Jewish state in the land of the Palestinian people. And it was one of their frustrations. Theodore Herschel and the Zionist Congress and the Zionist organizations, they couldn't muster the cooperation up within the Jewish communities. So it seems here they were getting the government to do it for them, and probably paying people lots of money. So you just got to say, just like in the United States, with these women's riots and protests and all this other stuff, with Trump's inauguration, how many people were busting their intent intentionally, and how much of all this is planned by different people trying to organize some huge new reality, new paradigm. In these activities, members of the anti-Semitic organization National and Christian Defense League, headed by A.C. Kuza, played a leading role. They organized frequent parades with the intention of terrorizing the Jews and fomenting riots against them. So again, somebody was organizing this, and somebody at the same time, when I go over Theodore Herschel and the Zionist programs, the congressional Zionist hearings and all that, they were having problems getting the corporation of the Jews, and they had to bring that about. So were they actually causing internal strife for these Jews to make them unhappy and motivate them to move? It seems so. In addition, the authorities took official measures, such as the closure of Jewish institutions, schools, newspapers, and cultural organizations. Many Jewish youth left for Israel or America. So they were either leaving wherever they were all over Eastern Europe, probably not all over, but in these Jewish dense communities, for Israel and America. And it was all planned and organized. You just can't show up on a boat in America. It has to be planned. And apparently in my previous research, I can't remember which video, but in my research, I think they did the same thing in Iraq with way back in history with the king, causing internal hatred towards the Jews that lived there so that they would move to Israel. They wouldn't move on their own. They were happy. So you have to cause a lot of hatred and riots in the community to get them to leave. It's all planned, I keep saying. Many Jewish left for Israel and America. In 1938, the Jews were further hit by anti-Semitic laws in the Kuza government, and more of them lost their civil rights. Many Zionist movements were active in Kishinev, especially under Romanian rule. Almost all trends of Zionism were represented, including the strong Hey Hazut movement. Zionist and Yiddishnist, the Yiddish people, waged a sharp struggle to determine the character of the Jewish schools. Roman authorities at first encouraged the development of independent Jewish education. So like I said, usually when the Jewish people start showing up, the country where they're going to encourages them to strive and work hard and succeed. But then at some point, somehow the tide turns, and what is it that they do? Besides owning 29 of 38 factories and all kinds of other things, and being accused of corruptionists and other things. Book's a tad bit heavy. All right, let me move on and try to finish this on the topic Kishinev, apparently an area over there on the western side of Russia, north of the Black Sea, north of the Mediterranean. All right. The authorities later tried to restrict Jewish education, but it continued until Russian annexation in June 1940. So we had World War II now taking place. My muscles get built up holding these books up. I need a little book stand. Among the noteworthy achievements was the Hebrew Kindergarten, 1918, of the Yadnef Society. So I'm saying, an achievement was the Hebrew Kindergarten? They're little children. What are you going to try to put in their heads in kindergarten? I shouldn't ask that, seeing all the games and evil stuff I see that they get to children, even the cartoons now, in 2017, 2016, paying attention to the stuff at Christmas time at the store. I said, oh my God, that stuff is going to get in their minds. You think it's a plan? This new age, new world order? And the Institute for the Training of Kindergarten Teachers, 1921, and the Cultural Center, which published its own monthly. I'm just reading my highlighted paragraphs here. Many Yiddish newspapers appeared, but they were short-lived, and the weekly and Arbit, 1920 to 1935, by the Zuri Zion Party. So if anybody doesn't want to believe in Zionism or Zion or Zionist, all they need to do is read these Encyclopaedia Judaica, which, by the way, I will look up Zion and make videos on that word in the book besides Theodore Herschel or this town or other topics involving Zionism, which is basically the creation of a Jewish state in the world so all the Jewish people can have a national homeland no matter where they live. And we know how many of them are in powerful positions in the United States government and probably the world. Can that be good for us? By German-Russian agreement in June 1940, Russia annexed Bessaraba during the year of Russian domination until 1941. All Jewish institutions were closed down and the Zionist movement outlawed. In May 1941, the authorities arrested and exiled to Siberia all who were defined as enemies of the regime. Those included the activists of the various Jewish movements and the wealthy Jews. There were 70,000 Jews in the town on the eve of the Holocaust. So that's another whole topic, Holocaust, which apparently don't mention it to any Jewish person because they will get very angry. And apparently it's turned into almost a religious event for these people. Like in America, we say, remember the Alamo, or remember 9/11. These people, it's the Holocaust, and there are many claims that it was there were a lot of Jewish people who were killed in Germany, no doubt. There were a lot of Germans killed, and Americans, and people all over the world. But apparently, in the Holocaust industry, they call it, they've turned it into some kind of Jewish religious special event or something to be memorialized. That's another topic for another day. I think I made a video on that. From July 17, 1941, Kishinev was occupied by German and Romanian units who entered it together with units of the Appenzgruppe D. The massacre of Kishinev Jews began immediately under the auspices of the something like the SS German troops or whoever they were. Instantgruppen, maybe they were Russian. And by the time of the concentration of the Jews into the ghetto was completed, About 10,000 had been slaughtered. Remember, this is the Encyclopaedia Judaica. This is their version of the history. And they wrote this encyclopedia. They can write history however they want to, I suppose. The order to establish a ghetto and to wear the yellow badges was issued by the NSET Commandos, Unit 11A, which from time to time took a number of people out of the ghetto and killed them. This is in Romania. The Romanian Gendarmeria acted similarly. German and Romanian reports mention 3 such operations on August 1411 persons. So on August 1, 1941, 411 persons were killed by the Germans. The 39 survivors who buried the dead were returned to the ghetto to inform its inhabitants of the deed. And I do believe back then there were some horrific things done to peoples. No doubt about it. When Russia took over the area, then the Romanians took it over, then the Germans took it over. So Unit 11A liquidated 551 Jews on the pretext of their being communist agents. On August 8th, Romanian Guardians removed 500 men and 25 women from the ghetto for forced labor. A week later, 200 of them were returned as unfit for work, while the rest disappeared. I did look on the computer. The town's called Kishinev. Kishinev. So on October 4th, 1941, deportations began to Transnistria, the first group containing 1,600 persons. So now I'm curious where Transnistria is. After this, between 700 and 1,000 Jews were deported daily. So like I said, in my opinion, they were deporting these Jewish peoples intentionally, and they did want to populate the land of Israel to several settlements they had created there. Before the annexation of the United Nations or whoever gave them the Palestinians land, somewhere around 1947, 46 or 48. After this, between 700 and 1,000 were deported daily Jews, the last group leaving October 31st. Many of the deportees were robbed and murdered on the way to the Dniester River, while mass murder took place on the banks of the river, carried out by the Romanian gendarmes, their army, and German soldiers. In Transnistria, Jews were sent to various camps and ghettos, where 2/3 of them died from epidemics, hunger, and exposure. I wouldn't be surprised of that. It was a world war. The exact number of dead is not known, but taking into account the proportions of those killed in Bessarabia from the time of the Romanian and German conquest until the deportations to Transnistria, on the one hand, and the number of those who died in Transnistria, on the other hand, it may be estimated that 65,000 Jewish inhabitants of Kishinev of 1941, 53,000 perished. So it was right in the middle between Russia and Germany and Romania and all these countries. There was a world war going on, and the Jewish people played a huge part and were obviously not liked by a lot of authorities and governments in those places. And why they dragged the United States into this war is beyond my reasoning, and why they want to do the things they're doing with this new age and new world order, United Nations, sustainability, biodiversity, the Rainbow Coalition, and all that other stuff. just bewilders me. That's why I read these things and try to figure out who's controlling the world and what are they trying to do. Is it a battle between good and evil? Who are the good people and who are the evil folks? Restrictive measures were imposed on the Jewish community in the 1960s. The bar mitzvah ceremony was forbidden in 1961 in this area. All synagogues but one were closed in 1964. The Mohalem was apparently warned to cease performing circumcisions. The baking of matzah, however, was permitted in 1965. The Jewish ceremony, halved in area to make room for development, was completely closed in the 1960s, and the tombstones were damaged and destroyed, although the new cemetery was kept in order. 31 Jews were arrested for economic crimes in 1962. This is in this Kishinev area. Kishinev. In 1967, several Jewish students were expelled from the university when they refused to make a public denunciation of Israel's aggression. That would be 1967, and Israel was attacking, I think they had another war on the Palestinians, maybe the Egyptians in the area. Now, of course, we know in Syria, the slaughter is relentless against the Syrian government and Assad. And they have plans, as I said earlier, if you go look up Greater Israel, for a huge nation, including a lot of the land of Syria, Iraq, Egypt, and current Israel. So this is all planned. I've been reading this. I'm going to read some more on Zionism. A Jewish dramatic society established in 1966 with about 100 members put on a performance of Hershuf Ostropolen. The official censor of 1959 reported 42,934 Jews in Kishinev, and in 1970 the Jewish population was estimated at 60,000. So in this Kishinev area in Moldova, just east of Russia, it seems like they're doing quite well today. We started this video. Stuff I read earlier, you can look it up. Pause your computer and read it. And here it is. The Russian borders right there. The Black Sea. So it mentions all this growth and activities, and then the resulting of the government, the newspaper, the police chief, the people that turned on them in this one community. And in the other video I made, 2007, 2006, 106 series, Freemasonry and Satanism, getting worn out from talking so long. We know that said in there, General Ulysses Grant in the United States in the 1880s banned or exiled all the Jews from the Tennessee territories. And there's much more. So you can't talk about these things in public, and you can talk about anything else. And there is these background programs going on, propaganda, with the divide and conquer of the Republican Party, Hillary Clinton, and the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, the Republican Party, Donald Trump. You just wonder where it's going to end. What's the end game? What's this new world order, this new age? What is history? Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.